Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I've got to be honest with you. I spent the entire weekend reading through the stack of research notes, articles, and theological essays you sent over for this deep dive, and I walked away with a massive headache. A good headache, mind you.
Yeah.
The kind you get when you're trying to visualize a fourth dimension, but a headache nonetheless.
I did warn you. We aren't doing light and fluffy today. We are effectively staring into the sun.
No, we're definitely not doing fluffy. We are tackling something that might be the single massive engineering problem in the history of the universe. And I don't mean building the pyramids or landing on Mars. I'm talking about the architecture of reality itself. We have a stack of sources today that includes everything from, ancient Hebrew lexicon studies to modern philosophical essays on determinism, and they are all circling one impossible question.
It is the ultimate paradox. It's the question that has kept philosophers, theologians, and probably a few insomniacs awake for thousands of years.
So here is the hook for you, the listener, right up front. If God is almighty, and we use that word a lot in church or in religious circles, almighty meaning total sovereignty, total control, the boss of everything, how in the world can he create a being like me?
Who are you?
Or you? Or even an angel?
A being that can look the Almighty in the face and say no.
Exactly.
Ew.
Feels like a contradiction. It feels like a logical impossibility.
Yeah.
If I have 100% free will to choose my breakfast or my spouse or my sin, then doesn't that mean God has 0% control over those things?
Right.
It feels like a zero-sum game.
That is the intuition most people have. It's what our sources call the zero-sum fallacy.
The zero-sum fallacy.
Yeah, the idea is that power is a finite pie. If I give you a slice of freedom, that is a slice of control I have to give up. So if you have autonomy, God's sovereignty must, recede to make room for it.
Right. Either I'm free and God is just watching from the sidelines hoping I don't screw up. Or God is in total control and I'm just a robot, a puppet on a string. There's no middle ground.
But the stack of sources we are diving into today argues that this is actually a massive misunderstanding of what power really is.
Okay.
The thesis here is mind-bending. The argument is that only a God of infinite, truly almighty power could afford to take the risk of creating free agents.
So a weak God would need robots.
A weak God would require absolute determinism. Think about it. If you are a lesser deity or even just a human dictator, you need to micromanage.
Right. You're constantly looking over your shoulder.
You need secret police. You need to control the narrative. You need to ensure every atom moves exactly where you want it to, because if one thing goes wrong, your whole plan might just fall apart.
You're terrified of variables.
Exactly. But the God of the Bible. The sources on view, he is so powerful, he can allow rebellion, he can allow chaos, he can allow you to make a mess of things.
I can allow the devil to riot.
He can allow the devil to riot, and somehow, through a mechanics that is almost impossible for us to grasp, he still guarantees the final checkmate.
That is a massive claim. It's the difference between playing checkers against a toddler and playing, 3D chess against a billion opponents at once.
And guaranteeing you win every single time without cheating.
Okay, so help us navigate this.
Yeah.
Because if we don't structure this, my brain is going to melt. What is our roadmap for this dive?
We have a full agenda. We're going to start with the why. Why build an open system at all? I mean, why not just stick with rocks and gravity?
Safe. Predictable.
Very. Then we need to look at the two distinct groups of players in this game. Angels and humans.
And the sources made a big deal about the difference between those two.
Right. A huge difference. It's crucial to understanding the whole picture. I mean, one group falls and gets chains, the other falls and gets a cross. We need to unpack why.
Okay.
Then we're going to get into the machinery of sovereignty. This is the technical stuff. How does God actually do it? We've got case studies on Pharaoh, Judas, and a king named Abimelech that are, frankly, terrifying.
I wrote the Abimelech story 3 times. It's wild. It's like Minority Report meets the Old Testament.
That's a great way to put it. And finally, we'll look at the unseen realm, the spiritual warfare aspect of all this, and what it all means for us today.
Right.
Specifically, we're going to talk about AI and parenting.
AI and parenting. 2 things that don't usually go together, but we're going to make it work. Let's jump in. Section 1, the theology of freedom.
Let's do it.
So let's start at the very beginning, the open system. If you are God and you want things done right, why create a system where things can go wrong?
Yeah.
Why not just build a closed, deterministic machine where everything works perfectly?
The sources describe this as the difference between a closed system and an open system. A closed system is safe, it's predictable. A rock doesn't rebel against gravity.
Right.
A planet doesn't decide to stop orbiting because it's having a bad day. They obey because they must.
Right. A rock doesn't have a choice. It just sits there being a rock. That's its whole job.
But God didn't just want rocks or planets. The sources point us to Genesis 1.26:27, the concept of imago Dei, the image of God. This is foundational.
Imago Dei.
To be made in the image of God necessitates the capacity for volition, for will.
Because God has a will. He's not just a force like gravity.
God chooses. He's the ultimate free agent. If he creates a being in his image, that being cannot be a machine. A machine has no will. It only has programming. A man without a will isn't really a man in that sense. He's just, biological hardware.
But why the risk? I mean, if you're going to build this thing, if God knows everything, he knew Lucifer would rebel, he knew Adam would eat the fruit, why build a system that he knew would break?
That's the million-dollar question. And the sources point us to the nature of love and worship.
But isn't that just a convenient theological excuse? Oh, he did it for love. It sounds a bit like a Hallmark card.
Well, let's try a thought experiment. Imagine you could build a perfect spouse. You are an incredible engineer, and you program an android. You code it to be physically perfect, intellectually matched to you, and, most importantly, you program it to adore you.
Sounds pretty good so far. No arguments about where to eat dinner.
Right. Every morning, this android wakes up, looks deep into your eyes, and says, "I love you. You are the most amazing person in the universe." It never misses a beat. It serves you perfectly. Now, here's the question. Does that android love you?
No, of course not. It's just running a script.
Why doesn't it love you? It's doing everything a lover would do.
Because it doesn't have a choice. It has to say that. The I love you is meaningless because there's no option to say I hate you. Or even just, I'm not in the mood today.
Exactly. And that is the crux of the argument in the source material. Love, by definition, requires the capacity to not love. Worship requires the capacity to reject. If God simply wanted compliance, he has the stars. They obey gravity perfectly. If he wanted complex compliance, he has animals. But if he wants sons, if he wants a real relationship, he has to introduce the possibility of no.
So the no gives value to the yes.
Precisely. The risk is the price of the relationship. To create a being capable of genuine love is to inevitably create a being capable of genuine rebellion. You cannot have one without the other. It's a package deal.
And that's the definition of free will we're working with,
Right.
It's not just autonomy in the sense of doing whatever I feel like.
Right. The sources define it specifically as the capacity for moral choice. Deuteronomy 30.19 is the classic text here. God says, "I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing, therefore choose life."
Choose life, not be programmed for life.
Right. The command implies the capacity. It would be cruel and nonsensical for God to command a rock to choose life. The rock can't hear you. The command validates the ability of the hearer to respond. It validates that the listener is a moral agent, not a machine.
Okay, so we have this risky open system. It's dangerous, it's volatile. Now let's look at the players in this system. The sources highlight that there are two distinct classes of moral agents. We usually just think about as humans, but we have to talk about the angels.
Yes, and chronologically, they come first.
And according to our notes, free will existed before the physical world was even made. That's a huge point.
That's right. The sources point to Ezekiel 28 and the anointed cherub.
This is the passage that scholars usually attribute to the fall of Satan, right? The King of Tyre passage.
Correct. It uses the human king as a type, but the description goes far beyond any mortal man. It describes a high-ranking spiritual being. It says he was full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. He was in Eden, the garden of God. But this seems to be a heavenly reality before the earthly Eden.
Okay.
And then there is this chilling phrase, "Iniquity was found in thee."
Found in thee. That's an interesting phrase. It wasn't put there.
It implies it originated internally. It wasn't an external virus. It wasn't someone whispering in his ear. It was a choice generated from within a perfect being in a perfect environment.
That busts the myth that we only sin because of our environment. You know, the idea that, if I just had more money or better parents or lived in a nicer neighborhood, I'd be perfect.
Exactly. Lucifer had the perfect neighborhood. He had the perfect position. He had direct access to the throne, and he still generated pride. This proves that free will is a property of spiritual intelligences, not just humans made of dust.
Okay, so let's dive into section 2 then. The angelic experiment, or I guess the angelic reality. These aren't the chubby babies with harps we see in Renaissance paintings.
Far from it. The Bible calls them mighty ones. Psalm 103 calls them those who excel in strength. Hebrews calls them ministering spirits. These are beings of immense power and intellect. They stand in the direct presence of the Creator.
They see the face of God, unfiltered.
They see the unshielded glory, and yet some of them rebelled.
Let's talk about that fall. The sources reference Isaiah 14, the I will statements. This is fascinating psychology. It's like a peek into the very first evil thought.
It is a glimpse into the first sin. And it wasn't murder, it wasn't adultery, it was pure, distilled pride. 5 times in that passage, the rebellious spirit says, I will. I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne. I will be like the Most High.
It's a declaration of independence, a coup d'etat.
A complete one. It's the creature trying to displace the Creator. And remember, this rebellion happened in a perfect environment. There was no poverty, no trauma, no bad parenting. Lucifer became the tempter. He invented the lie.
That is terrifying. To invent evil in a place of perfect good, it's not just choosing a bad option, it's creating the bad option from scratch.
It is, and it leads to a very difficult theological point that the sources bring up, the fixed state of angels.
Right, I noticed this. There is no plan of redemption for angels. Hebrews 2.16 says, Jesus did not take on the nature of angels to help them. Why? I mean, that seems harsh. Why no angelic salvation? If God is almighty and full of grace, why not save them?
The sources suggest a few reasons, and they're heavy, but they primarily have to do with the nature of their knowledge and their choice. Angels sinned in the direct, unshielded presence of God.
Okay.
They had full knowledge.
They knew exactly who God was. They weren't guessing. There was no fog of war for them.
Exactly. They saw the glory. They saw the power. They understood the stakes on a level we can't even comprehend. And they still looked at him and said, no, I want your chair.
Wow.
That kind of rejection with that level of clarity seems to be a decisive, permanent hardening of the will. It's irrevocable.
So there's no oops factor. There's no I was tricked or I didn't know any better.
None. They knew and they chose. And that choice was final.
And that judgment proves God's sovereignty. I mean, if you have a rebellion of mighty ones, cosmic warriors, a weak God might be overthrown.
A weak God would be in serious trouble, civil war in heaven. That's a crisis. But the Almighty, the sources point to Tartarus.
Tartarus. It's like a dipping sauce for fish sticks.
It does, but it's much less appetizing. It's a specific Greek term used only once in the Bible, in 2 Peter 2.4. It refers to a deep abyss, a prison. It says God cast them down to hell, Tartarus, and delivered them into chains of gloomy darkness.
Chains of darkness. That sounds like a heavy metal album, but theologically it's intense.
It shows that God can imprison high-level spiritual intelligences. He sets boundaries they cannot cross. Even the lake of fire, Jesus says in Matthew 25, was prepared for the devil and his angels. It's a sovereign containment facility built specifically for them.
So the takeaway here is that God isn't threatened. He isn't panicking. He allows the rebellion, but he has the handcuffs ready.
He is the warden as well as the creator. He gives them the dignity of free will, but he enforces the responsibility of the choice.
Okay, so that's the angels. High power, high knowledge, fixed judgment, chains, no redemption. Now let's pivot to section 3, the human paradox. This is where we come in.
And this is where the story changes dramatically.
Genesis 3, the human fall. How is this different from the angelic fall? Because the result, sin, death, separation, it looks the same.
The result is the same, separation from God, but the cause has a crucial nuance. The sources highlight deception.
Right.
Eve was deceived by the serpent. She was tricked. There was an external tempter. She didn't generate the lie herself. She bought into a lie presented to her.
Has God really said? That was the line. Casting doubt.
Exactly. She was manipulated. And Adam wasn't deceived, the New Testament says, but he followed his wife. There was a weakness there, a failure of leadership, but it was still in the context of an external temptation. We are made of dust. We see through a glass darkly.
We are fragile. We're not these mighty ones.
We are fragile. And immediately, right there in the wreckage of Eden, God does something he didn't do for Lucifer.
Genesis 3.15.
The proto-evangelium, the first gospel. Before they're even kicked out of the garden, before the curse of sweat and thorns is even pronounced, God promises a seed who will crush the serpent's head. He introduces a plan of redemption instantly.
This is the asymmetry of grace you mentioned in the intro.
It's the aha moment of the whole deep dive. Both angels and humans used free will to rebel. God imprisoned the angels. God offered the cross to humans.
That hardly seems fair, does it? If I were an angel, I'd be protesting. Why do they get a savior and I get chains? They do the same thing.
If you want fair, everyone goes to judgment. Fair is justice. Fair is getting what you deserve. What humans got was not fairness, it was mercy.
And the source is, quote, Romans 9:15 here. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy.
This is the divine prerogative. God is under no obligation to save anyone. That's what makes grace amazing. If he had to do it, it wouldn't be grace, it would be a salary, it would be debt.
Right.
But because he chose to do it for humanity, it highlights a different aspect of his almighty nature.
The power to forgive.
Yes. And think about the cost. A lesser god, a pagan deity like Zeus or Thor, they can punish, they can throw lightning bolts, that's easy. Destroying things is easy. I can destroy a building with a sledgehammer, but to absorb the cost of rebellion, to take the penalty upon himself, that requires a depth of power that goes beyond mere force. It requires the power of atonement. It's infinitely harder to forgive than to punish.
Psalm 103 comes up here. He has not dealt with us according to our sins.
That is the almighty restraint of God.
Oh.
He has the power to destroy us, but he uses his power to redeem us.
So we have these two groups. Angels, high power, high knowledge, fixed judgment, humans. Lower power, partial knowledge, redeemable state. But now we have to get into the nuts and bolts. Section 4, the mechanics of control.
This is the engineering room. Put your hard hat on.
This is what I was struggling with all weekend. How does God govern a world full of billions of people making billions of free choices every day, some good, mostly bad, and still make sure his plan happens? The outline uses the term concurrent sovereignty or compatibilism. That sounds like jargon. Break it down.
It's a big theological word, but the concept is actually pretty simple. It means two things are true at the same time. Human choice is real. You really choose what to do. But God's control over the circumstances and consequences is also real.
Okay, so they're not mutually exclusive.
They're compatible. They run on parallel tracks. The key verse here is Proverbs 16:9. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps.
Think about that imagery. You plan the destination in your heart. That's your free will. I want to go rob that bank, or I want to go to the mission field.
Yeah.
That internal desire is yours.
But the steps, the actual ability to get there, the green lights, the red lights, the bridge being out, the flat tire, God directs the steps.
So I might want to rob the bank, but God makes sure my car gets a flat tire.
Exactly. Your will to rob the bank was genuine. You are guilty of the intent, but God sovereignly prevented the outcome. He controlled the circumstances.
This brings us to the case studies. And these are not just Sunday school stories. These are intense. Let's start with case study 1, veto power. The story of Abimelech in Genesis 20.
This is a classic example of the flat tire on a spiritual level, a divine flat tire.
Set the scene for us.
So Abraham is traveling through Gerar, and he pulls his classic cowardly move. He's afraid the locals will kill him to get to his beautiful wife, Sarah. So he tells everyone, she's my sister.
Which is a half-truth, but a full lie in intent. He's saving his own skin at her expense.
Right. And King Abimelech sees Sarah, likes what he sees, and takes her into his harem. Now pause here. This is a disaster. Sarah is the mother of the promise. The Isaac and the Messiah eventually comes through her. If Abimelech sleeps with her, the genealogy is corrupted. The plan of God is at risk.
And Abimelech thinks he's free to do this. He's the king. He has the power. He has the will. He has the harem. It's a done deal.
He has full autonomy until he goes to sleep.
Yeah.
God invades his dream. And God says, and this is verse 6, yes, I know you did this in the integrity of your heart.
Wait, God defends him. He says he's a good guy.
God acknowledges he was tricked by Abraham. Abimelech didn't know he was taking a married woman. But then God drops the hammer. He says, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her.
I withheld thee. That is a scary phrase. What does that actually mean? How did he do that?
The Hebrew implies a powerful restraint, a blockage. The sources speculate on what this looked like. Was it a sudden sickness? Was it a complete loss of libido? Was it a mental fog? We don't know the mechanism, but the theological implication is massive. God stepped into Abimelech's free will and hit the veto button.
So Abimelech woke up wanting to be with Sarah, but physically or mentally unable to do it.
Exactly. This is what the sources call the restraint of sovereignty. It proves that God can close a door so tightly that no human shoulder can batter it down. He honors free will generally, but he reserves the right to override the execution of that will when it threatens his ultimate plan.
That is comforting, actually. It means God has guardrails on the highway of history.
It is sovereign safety. We're going to come back to that.
Okay, case study 2, strategic confusion, the Tower of Babel, Genesis 11.
Here we have collective free will. Humanity unites in rebellion. They say, let us build a name for ourselves. They want to build a centralized totalitarian state to reach the heavens.
And there's this chilling verse where the Trinity observes them.
Yes. God says, "Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do."
That sounds like God is worried or impressed almost.
Not worried for himself, but worried for them. A unified, sinful humanity would create a premature global tyranny that would result in absolute destruction. It would be hell on earth too soon. If they have one language and one bad idea, there is no stopping the spread of evil.
So what's the intervention? Does he send fire? Does he send a plague?
No. Something much more elegant. He hacks their communication. He confuses their language.
He gathers their will.
It's brilliant. He disrupts their ability to collaborate in evil. It's a non-violent use of almighty power to slow down the progression of evil. He bought humanity time by introducing confusion. It's like jamming the radar of a unified rebellion.
Case study 3. This is the big one. Joseph, Genesis 50.
The ultimate definition of omnipotence right here.
Joseph's brothers sell him into slavery. They hated him. They wanted him gone. That was their free choice, right? No one made them do it.
Absolutely. They acted out of malice, jealousy, and greed. They were 100% responsible.
But years later, after Joseph becomes the prince of Egypt and saves the world from famine, he looks at them, these guys who ruined his life, and he says,
"You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good."
that's the crux of it. You meant, God meant, two different wills, one event.
Notice he doesn't say God made you do it. He doesn't absolve them. He says you meant evil. Your intent was yours. Your guilt is yours. But God took that raw material of evil choice and wove it into a plan to save life.
So God didn't need to force them to be good brothers to save Israel. He could use them being bad brothers to save Israel.
That is a higher order of power. To take the weapon formed against you and turn it into the tool that saves you, only the Almighty can do that. A lesser God would have had to stop the brothers. The Almighty let them do it and used it.
That leads us to the trickiest one. Case study 4. Prophecy versus choice. Judas and Pharaoh. Let's talk about Judas. This is one that always trips people up.
The betrayal of Jesus. It was prophesied centuries before. Psalm 41, Zechariah 11. Jesus knew who it was. He said, "One of you is a devil."
So here's the objection. Was Judas a robot? Did he have a choice? If it was written in Zechariah that someone would sell him for 30 pieces of silver, did Judas have to do it? Was he set up?
This is the tension. Jesus says in Matthew 26.24, "The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed."
Woe to that man. That implies responsibility. That implies guilt.
It absolutely implies guilt. If Judas was forced by God to do it, if God grabbed his hand and made him take the money, it would be unjust to pronounce woe on him. The biblical narrative shows Judas negotiating the price. He sought opportunity. He was active. He was greedy. He wanted to do it.
So the prophecy didn't force his hand. The prophecy saw his hand.
Exactly. Foreknowledge is not causation. That's the key. Just because I know the sun will rise tomorrow doesn't mean I make it rise. God, existing outside of time, saw the free choice of Judas and incorporated it into the plan of atonement. Judas bears the guilt because his desire was evil. God secures the redemption because his wisdom is infinite.
And Pharaoh. God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
Yeah.
That phrase always sounds like God is rigging the game, making the bad guy badder so he can show off.
It does. But if you read the narrative in Exodus carefully, you see a dance. It's a back and forth. For the first several plagues, the text says Pharaoh hardened his heart.
He did it himself.
He says no. He resists. He hardens his own heart again and again. He starts the process.
He sets the concrete.
He sets the concrete. And then there comes a point where God says essentially, okay, you want a hard heart? I will confirm that choice. God judicially strengthens Pharaoh's resolve in the direction he was already going.
So God didn't take a soft-hearted, nice guy and force him to be evil. He took a hard-hearted rebel and used him to display his glory.
Exactly. He locked him into his own bad choice. It's a terrifying judgment, actually. The judgment was letting Pharaoh be exactly who Pharaoh wanted to be and then using it for a divine purpose.
This brings us to a whole other layer of this onion. Section 5, the unseen realm. Because it's not just God and humans. There are spiritual interactions behind the scenes that affect all of this.
The Bible is very clear that we are in a populated universe. It's not empty space between us and God.
The outline calls this the permission protocol, and it points to Job, the first 2 chapters.
Job chapters 1 and 2 are maybe the most revealing chapters in the entire Bible regarding spiritual governance. We get a peek into the divine council. Satan appears before God. He clearly hates Job. He wants to destroy him.
But he doesn't just attack. You can't just jump him in a dark alley.
He can't. He has to file a request. He complains, "Have you not put a hedge around him?" Satan himself acknowledges the spiritual force field God has erected.
So the protection is the default setting.
Yes. and God drops the hedge, but he sets a specific limit.
Spare his life.
Spare his life. It's a fence. God says, you can go this far, but no further. This shows that demonic power is real. It caused wind, fire, sickness in the story. But it is entirely subordinate to divine sovereignty. Satan is God's devil. He is on a leash.
Then there is Daniel 10, the war in the heavenlies. This one always blows my mind. Daniel prays, and for 21 days, nothing happens. Radio silence.
And Daniel probably thought God was ignoring him or that his prayer wasn't good enough.
And then the angel shows up and says, I was delayed, which is a crazy thing for an angel to say.
The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me. This is bizarre but crucial. It implies a territorial spirit, a fallen angel of high rank over the empire of Persia, was physically or spiritually blocking the messenger angel.
And the angel needed backup. Michael the archangel had to come help.
What's fascinating here is the interplay of human will and spiritual war. Daniel's prayer, his free choice to keep praying for 3 full weeks, seems to be the battery power that kept the mission going.
The outline says human prayer activated a spiritual response.
Yes. The delay wasn't because God was thinking about it. The sources are clear. God dispatched the answer immediately on day 1. The delay was in the conflict zone. It shows that the active will of the enemy can cause friction and resistance, but ultimately, the will of God prevails.
And then there's Peter. Luke 22. This is so personal. Jesus looks at Peter and says, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat.
Again, the permission protocol. Satan has asked. He wanted to crush Peter like he tried to crush Job. He saw Peter's pride and wanted to exploit it.
And what was Jesus' counter move? Does he say, I told him, no, you can't touch him?
No. He says, but I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. Intercession. Jesus didn't stop the sifting completely. Peter did fall. He did deny Christ 3 times.
Free will. He made that choice.
Free will. But because of Jesus' intercession, sovereignty Peter was restored. He didn't end up like Judas. The sifting removed the chaff, which was his pride, and left the wheat, which was his faith.
So the enemy's attack was used to refine the saint.
Joseph's principle again. You meant it for evil. God meant it for good.
Let's bring this down to earth. Section 6, modern application. Because most of us aren't fighting princes of Persia or running Egypt. We're just trying to get through the week. What does this mean for the learner listening right now?
It completely reframes how we view our lives and our culture. First, let's look at what the outline calls the illusion of autonomy.
Modern culture loves the word freedom. That's our favorite word.
But we define it as freedom from restriction. I want to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with no consequences. I want to be my own God.
You can't tell me what to do. That's the mantra.
Right. But the biblical definition of freedom is freedom for excellence. It's the power to do what is right. The outline uses a great analogy here. AI and robots.
Yeah, let's talk about that. We are obsessed with AI right now.
We are creating beings that operate somewhat independently, but we are terrified of them. Why? Because if they go rogue, we don't know if we can control them.
We're afraid of the alignment problem, getting them to want what we want.
Exactly. Our AI is limited by code. If the code fails, we're in trouble. If Skynet decides humans are a virus, we don't have a backup plan. But God's creatures are limited by covenant and sovereignty. God is the superior programmer. He doesn't need to hard code every single move to ensure the outcome. He can allow the AI, which is us, to learn, to choose, even to rebel, and he still guarantees the software won't crash the universe.
That's a relief. God isn't worried about Skynet.
He is not. He knows how to pull the plug, or better yet, how to rewrite the outcome in real time by using the rebellion for his own purposes.
What about parenting?
Yeah.
This is the most relatable creation experience we have. We bring little free agents into the world.
It absolutely mirrors the divine parent. We raise children. Do we want them to be puppets?
No. I want my kid to clean his room because he learns responsibility, not because I'm moving his arms and legs for him like a marionette. That's just creepy.
Exactly. You want internalized character. But to get that, you have to take the risk that he won't clean his room. You have to risk the rebellion to get the relationship.
The terrifying teenage years.
The years where they say no, a lot. But just like God, we try to set boundaries. We use means of punishment, timeouts, taking the phone away, and means of grace, hugs, forgiveness, paying for the window they broke. We are instinctively modeling the theological framework we've been discussing.
And the legal system, too. Prison and parole, justice and mercy.
It reflects the Imago Dei. We understand instinctively that free will requires consequences. We don't put rocks in jail. We put moral agents in jail.
Yeah.
If you choose to break the law of free will, The sovereign state puts you in a box imprisonment. It's a small echo of the cosmic reality.
There's also a note here about addiction. The paradox of the enslaved will.
This is where the modern idea of total freedom just falls apart. John 8:34 says, "Whoever commits sin is a slave of sin." You start by choosing the drug freely. I can handle this. But eventually, the drug chooses you.
You lose your free will. You become its puppet.
You become a slave. Your want to gets broken. And the 12-step logic aligns perfectly with this theology. What is step 1?
Admitting you are powerless.
You admit that your free will has failed. It's not strong enough.
And step 2.
You come to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. You need a higher power to fix the broken will.
You need sovereignty to liberate the will.
Exactly. Salvation is the intervention of the sovereign God to liberate the enslaved will of the human. It's the ultimate act of power and grace combined.
Wow. Okay, we are coming to the end of our dive. Let's hit the outro. We need to leave the listener with some encouragement, a warning, and a final thought.
The encouragement is massive. It's the concept of the safety net.
Romans 8:28.
God works all things together for good. Listen, if you are a believer, you can relax, not in a lazy way, but in a trusting way. You are going to make mistakes. People are going to hurt you with their free will. The economy might tank, but the Almighty God is the safety net under the high wire act of your life.
No created thing, including your boss or a demon or your own stupid mistake, can separate us from the love of God.
He incorporates our failures into his plan. He takes the wreckage of our choices and builds a masterpiece. That is sovereign safety.
But there is a warning. We can't just gloss over that.
No, don't force the door.
The story of Abimelech.
God stopped him. But Romans 1 tells us that if people persist in rebellion, if they keep pushing and pushing against God's restraint, eventually God gave them over. He removes the restraint. He lets you have what you want.
And that is the worst judgment of all, to get exactly what you thought you wanted.
It is. To be abandoned to your own broken free will is a terror. Grace is not a license to sin. Remember the angels. They were beings of higher power, and God didn't spare them when they rebelled, so we should walk with fear and trembling.
Don't presume on the safety net.
Exactly. Use it, but don't test it.
So here is our provocative final thought to chew on this week.
It's the definition of almighty. To create a rock that doesn't move is simple physics. To create a robot that obeys is simple mechanics. But to create a free being who can look you in the eye and reject you, and yet to still possess the wisdom and power to guarantee that your ultimate plan of redemption succeeds, that your kingdom comes, and that your will is done.
That is the definition of almighty.
That is a God worth worshiping. That is a God who isn't afraid of your no because he knows how to get to his yes.
And here is a call to action for you this week. The sources suggested a prayer of restraint. It's a brave prayer. It's not for the faint of heart.
It goes like this. Lord, if this path I'm on is not your will, block it. Withhold me from sinning against you. Even if I want it, if it's wrong, close the door so tight I can't open it. Be my Abimelech hedge.
Give God the veto power over your life.
It's the safest way to live.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. This was heavy, but man, was it good. We'll see you next time.
Keep thinking.